For our daughter, my greatest love, my biggest secret, always.
I love you.
I love you too.
When Elena saw the blood on her sleeve, she almost kept driving. But the black sedan behind her had followed every turn for 14 blocks. So at 2:13 in the morning, she ran up the porch of the man she had betrayed, pounded on his door with both fists, and screamed, "Daniel, please! If you ever loved me, don't let him see me out here!" And if stories about love, betrayal, and the kind of truth that rips your life open hit you right in the chest, subscribe, like the video, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Because this one does not let go. And the last truth in this story changes everything. The porch light snapped on. For one horrible second, Elena saw herself reflected in the glass. Hair half fallen out of its pins, mascara burned down her cheeks, lower lip split, silk blouse torn at the shoulder. Then the door opened. Daniel stood there in gray sweatpants and a dark t-shirt, one hand still on the lock, the other gripping the edge of the door like he already knew bad news had a face. He looked thinner than she remembered, not weaker, just carved down. His eyes dropped to the blood on her sleeve. Then they lifted to the road behind her, where the black sedan slowed but didn't stop. "Elena," he said quietly. She hated how calm his voice was, even now, even after what she'd done. "Please," she whispered, "don't ask anything. Just let me in." Daniel stepped aside. No lecture, no smug satisfaction, no "I told you so." That almost hurt worse. The second she crossed the threshold, the car rolled past the house without headlights, slow enough to make a promise. Daniel locked the door, turned off the foyer light, and looked at her again. "Did he hit you?" Elena opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Daniel's jaw tightened. He led her into the kitchen, flicked on the stove light, grabbed a clean towel, and pressed it into her shaking hands. There was a storm somewhere inside him. She could feel it trying to stay behind his ribs. "Sit," he said. She sat. He pulled out the first aid kit from the same drawer it had always been in. Same house, same kitchen, same man. Nothing felt the same. "He was looking for something," Elena said. Daniel didn't react right away. That scared her. "He tore the apartment apart," she continued, voice trembling. "He kept asking where you hid it. He said if I came here, you'd finally stop pretending." Daniel closed the kit slowly. What did he say he wanted? Elena swallowed. "The red ledger." For the first time that night, Daniel went completely still. Not confused, not surprised. Still. Her stomach dropped. "You know what that is." Daniel met her eyes. And in a voice so low it barely sounded human, he said, "I was afraid he'd come for that before he came for you." That should have been the moment Elena understood how badly she had misread her own life. But to understand that night, you have to understand the night she destroyed her marriage. It happened in a room full of candles, crystal glasses, and people who pretended not to stare while their rich friends bled in public. Daniel had organized the charity gala himself. Black tie, live quartet, a silent auction for the children's hospital Elena used to volunteer at before she stopped recognizing herself. She wore emerald silk. Daniel wore a black tuxedo and the exhausted look that had become his second skin over the past year. He'd barely touched her in months, barely talked, unless it was about bills, schedules, or whether the driver had been called. He disappeared at odd hours, guarded his phone, took meetings he wouldn't explain, slept in his office more nights than in their bed. And Elena, lonely, grieving, furious Elena, had convinced herself there was only one explanation: another woman. Then Adrian came back into her life. Adrian with the devastating smile and the memory for details no one should remember after 15 years. Adrian, who looked at her like she was still 23 and dangerous. Adrian, who said the kind of things Daniel had stopped saying. "You still tuck your hair behind your left ear when you're nervous. You laugh before you cry. You don't need this marble prison to prove you matter." The first time he touched her wrist, it felt like waking up underwater. The first time he kissed her, it felt like a punishment she wanted. The first time he asked, "When was the last time your husband really saw you?" she cried before she answered. So at the gala, after 2 glasses of champagne and months of anger fermenting into something reckless, Elena made the worst decision of her life where everyone could witness it. Daniel had just stepped on stage to thank donors when Adrian appeared at the back of the ballroom. He wasn't invited. He didn't need to be. He knew exactly what he was doing. Elena stood up so fast her chair scraped the floor. The violinists stumbled into silence. Daniel looked at her from the stage, one hand still holding the microphone. Her heart was pounding so hard it made her cruel. "I'm leaving," she said. Gasps whispered around the tables. Daniel didn't move. Elena turned toward him fully. "I know about the lies. I know about the late nights and the secret calls and the messages you delete before I can see them. You don't have to keep pretending." The room had become one giant held breath. She should have stopped there. She didn't. "I'm done being humiliated by a man who stopped loving me and didn't even have the decency to admit it." Adrian stepped closer, not touching her, letting the room draw its own conclusions. Daniel's face changed, but only if you knew him well enough to catch it. Not anger, not embarrassment. Pain. Pure, disciplined pain. He slowly set the microphone down. Then he came off the stage, crossed the ballroom, and stopped in front of her. So close she could smell his cologne beneath the winter air on his coat. "If you walk out tonight," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "take the blue wool coat in the car. It's colder than you think." That was it. No scene, no begging, no defense. The restraint felt like contempt. Elena laughed in his face. Then she took Adrian's hand and walked out while 100 people watched Daniel stand there alone. For the first 3 weeks, she thought she'd chosen freedom. Adrian rented a penthouse downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows and a bathtub bigger than her old kitchen table. He sent flowers for no reason, took her dancing on Tuesday nights, booked spontaneous weekends away, kissed her like he wanted the whole world to burn if it meant keeping her warm. He called her beautiful in the mornings. He listened when she talked about the baby she and Daniel had lost at 14 weeks. He didn't tell her to rest when she cried. He let her cry until she got ugly and tired and embarrassed, and then he held her anyway. Or at least, that's what it felt like. But cracks never appear all at once. They whisper first. Why hasn't Daniel contested anything? Why'd he sign the house over so easily? Did he ever tell you where he keeps his personal records? What happened to that old lake property in Vermont? Does he still use the downstairs safe? At first, Elena thought it was insecurity, male ego, comparison, curiosity. Then Adrian started asking the same questions in different ways. At breakfast, in bed, half drunk after midnight. "What do you mean you never had access to his study? You were married 6 years and didn't know his passcodes? Did he ever mention a handwritten ledger, red leather, about this size?" The first time he asked that last question, Elena frowned. "No, why?" Adrian smiled too quickly. "Business nonsense, forget it." But she didn't forget it. Because a week later, she woke up at 3 a.m. and found Adrian standing in the dark living room, staring at his phone. He didn't know she was there. His voice was flat. Nothing like the man who read Neruda to her in bed. "I'm close," he said. "She doesn't know where it is, but she'll lead me there." Elena froze. There was a pause. Adrian listened. Then he gave a dry little laugh that made her skin crawl. "No, she still thinks this is about love." He turned around and saw her. For half a second, the mask slipped. It was terrifying how quickly he put it back on. "Elena," he said softly, "why are you awake?" She looked at the phone in his hand. "Who were you talking to?" He walked over and touched her face. "You're shaking." "Who were you talking to, Adrian?" He smiled. "A client in London. Bad timing." "At 3 in the morning?" "Money doesn't sleep." He kissed her forehead. "Come back to bed." And Elena, already afraid of the answer, let him guide her back. That was the first lie she told herself. The second came 5 days later when she opened a drawer in his home office looking for a charger and found a folder filled with printed photographs. Daniel leaving a medical building. Daniel standing outside a law office. Daniel meeting someone in a parking garage. Daniel at a pharmacy. The dates stretched back nearly a year. Her mouth went dry. Adrian walked in behind her. There are moments when the person you love becomes a stranger so fast your body understands before your mind does. She stepped back. "What is this?" Adrian looked at the photos, then at her. "I can explain." "Why are you following my husband?" "Ex-husband," he corrected automatically. Something hot and sick twisted in her stomach. "Why are you following Daniel?" Adrian exhaled through his nose and shut the office door. "That man is not who you think he is." Elena's voice rose. "Neither are you." He stepped closer. You have no idea what he's been hiding. Then tell me. His jaw flexed. I'm trying to protect you. From what? From a man who built his life on stolen money and lies. It was exactly the kind of sentence designed to hook a drowning person. And for one desperate second, Elena almost grabbed it. But then she saw something she hadn't noticed before. A bruise on Adrian's knuckle. Fresh. Where did you get that? She asked. He looked down. Nothing. Her breathing turned shallow. You were at Daniel's office. He didn't answer. You broke into something. Elena. What did you do? His whole face hardened at once. No warmth, no poetry, no tenderness. Just irritation at being cornered. You need to stop asking questions you're not prepared to hear. The room went cold. She took another step back. And Adrian smiled. Not kindly. Why do you look so shocked? He asked. Did you really think a man like Daniel lost you without a reason? You think that kind of control disappears? He's hidden things from you from the day he married you. Elena forced herself to say it. Then why use me? Adrian's smile thinned. Because she was right. And he knew she knew it. That night she drove to Daniel's office. She told herself she wanted proof Adrian was lying. She told herself she wanted closure. She told herself a lot of things. What she really wanted was one honest answer from the man she had once loved enough to marry. The security guard almost didn't let her in. Daniel had just finished a meeting upstairs. When he saw her step off the elevator, his entire body tensed. Not with anger, with fear. Elena, he said, crossing the lobby too fast. Why are you here? She held up the folder of photographs with a shaking hand. Tell me what's happening. Daniel looked at the pictures only once. Then he took her by the elbow and guided her into an empty conference room, shut the blinds, and locked the door. The lock made her pulse jump. Daniel, did Adrian see you take these? He found me looking at them. A curse slipped out of Daniel's mouth. She had heard him swear maybe 4 times in 6 years. Answer me, she said. Why is he following you? What is the red ledger? What have you hidden from me? Daniel stared at her for a long moment. She could almost hear him deciding whether she could survive the truth. Finally, he said, You need to leave him tonight. Her laugh broke in the middle. That's your answer? It's the one that might keep you safe. Safe from what? From Adrian. No. She slapped the folder onto the table. No more half-truths. No more acting like I'm too fragile to hear my own life. If there is something I should know, you say it now. Daniel rubbed a hand across his face. He looked exhausted, pale, older than 38. You think I was cheating, he said quietly. Worse, she thought. I wanted you to be, because infidelity would have been simpler than whatever this was. I found deleted messages. To Dr. Weiss. Elena blinked. Daniel held her eyes. Oncology. Her throat closed. He reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a folded paper, and set it in front of her. A hospital wristband. His name. A date from 8 months ago. Another. And another. Something inside her dropped so far it felt endless. No, she whispered. Daniel didn't move. No. I didn't tell you because 2 weeks before my diagnosis, you stopped sleeping through the night again. You were barely eating. You were still blaming yourself for the miscarriage, and every time I touched the subject of doctors or hospitals, you shut down. I thought I could get through treatment first. I thought if I told you after, it would be over. Elena stared at the wristbands like they might rearrange themselves into something merciful. You slept in your office because chemo made me sick enough to crawl. His voice cracked only once. And I couldn't stand the idea of you hearing it through the bathroom door. She covered her mouth. The ballroom. The accusation. The way he stood there and took it. Oh my God. That's not all, Daniel said. He looked toward the blinds like time itself might be listening. Adrian used to work for me. Elena's head snapped up. He was a consultant on an acquisition 3 years ago. Smart, charming, impossible to pin down. I caught discrepancies in some client accounts. Small amounts at first, then larger ones. He'd been siphoning money through shell companies and manipulating widows, divorcees, older investors, anyone lonely enough to trust attention over instinct. Elena couldn't breathe. I started building a case, quietly. Before I could move, he disappeared. Daniel's eyes darkened. Then last year I found out he was back in the city. Around the same time, I discovered he was making inquiries about you. Me? He knew about us. He knew about the strain in our marriage. He knew I was sick. Daniel swallowed. And he knew I kept a handwritten ledger because the digital files were compromised. The red ledger. He targeted me, Elena said, but it came out like someone else's voice. Yes. Her knees nearly buckled. She grabbed the chair behind her. But that's not the worst part, Daniel said. A silence opened between them so deep she didn't want him to fill it. He was driving the car the night Nora died. Everything in Elena's body went numb. Her younger sister, Nora, 19, and loud and impossible and alive until one rain-soaked night when a hit-and-run turned her into a closed casket and a family that never healed. Elena stared at him. No. Daniel's face didn't change. No. The driver was never found. Because Adrian's father paid to bury it. The room tilted. Elena. Daniel stepped forward, but she held out a hand and he stopped. You're lying. I wish I were. He was in Madrid that year. He sent me pictures. Photos can be timed. Accounts can be staged. I have witness statements, repair records, a payment trail, and a confession transcript from the mechanic who fixed the car off the books. Every sentence was a knife. Elena, I wanted the evidence airtight before I told you. Adrian's father still has powerful friends. If I came to you with half a case, you'd confront him. He'd deny it. Then he'd disappear again. She was crying now and didn't remember when it started. My sister, she said, and the words didn't seem big enough. Daniel's jaw clenched. I know. No, you don't. Her voice broke open. You don't know what it did to my mother. You don't know what it did to me. He took that blow without flinching. You're right, he said. I don't. But I know what it cost you every day after. And I wasn't going to let the man responsible get close enough to finish breaking what was left. Then why didn't you tell me sooner? She wanted to scream. But somewhere beneath the horror, she already knew the answer. Because she hadn't trusted him enough to listen. Because grief had made her suspicious, and loneliness had made her easy to seduce. Because Adrian had found the exact crack and slipped right through it. She stumbled out of the conference room and threw up in the restroom down the hall. Daniel waited outside the whole time. Didn't knock, didn't rush her. Just stayed. When she finally opened the door, he was leaning against the wall, looking so tired it hurt to see him. Come home, he said. Those two words almost shattered her. Home. The place she had left with another man while her husband was fighting cancer and chasing the truth about her sister's death alone. She started crying so hard she couldn't stand up straight. Daniel stepped forward and caught her before she hit the floor. He held her while she folded. Not possessively, not triumphantly, just carefully, like he already knew broken things don't survive being gripped too hard. But horror doesn't end because truth arrives. Sometimes truth is just the first door. Elena agreed to leave Adrian the next morning. She never got the chance. When she went back to the penthouse, the place was wrecked. Drawers gutted, cushions slashed, paintings ripped off the walls. Adrian was in Daniel's old navy sweater, the one Elena had taken by accident months ago, rifling through the bedroom closet like a thief who had forgotten to pretend. He turned when she entered. His eyes were bloodshot. Where is it? Elena backed toward the door. Get away from me. He crossed the room in 3 strides and grabbed her arm so hard she cried out. Where did he move it? I don't know. Stop lying to me. His face was inches from hers now, stripped bare and ugly. He kept everything in that book. Names, accounts, dates, payoffs, all of it. If that gets out, I'm finished. Something in her snapped. Good. Let him hear it. My sister, she whispered. Adrian blinked. You killed my sister. For the first time, she saw actual fear. Not remorse. Fear. He told you. The room went silent. No denial. No outrage. Nothing. Just confirmation. Elena slapped him so hard her palm stung. Adrian smiled through it, which was worse than if he had hit her back. She ran into the road, he said coldly. I was drunk. I panicked. It was years ago. Years ago. Like a stain on his shirt. Like bad weather. Elena lunged for the lamp on the side table, but Adrian caught her wrist and shoved her so hard she hit the edge of the dresser. Pain exploded across her shoulder. Then he leaned down, voice almost gentle. "You're going to call Daniel," he said, "and you're going to ask for the ledger." She looked up at him through tears and spit in his face. That was when everything changed. Because some people can tolerate hate. Humiliation is what makes them reckless. Adrian wiped his cheek slowly. Then he smiled. And Elena knew he was going to do something terrible. She ran before he could. Down 27 floors, barefoot, heart hammering, blood on her sleeve from where glass nicked her arm in the doorway. She stole her own fear back one step at a time. And Adrian followed. Which is how she ended up on Daniel's porch at 2:13 in the morning, begging the man she betrayed to save her from the one she chose instead. Back in Daniel's kitchen, after the first aid kit and the towel and the question about the ledger, Elena finally told him everything. The apartment, the confession, the slap, the chase. Daniel listened without interrupting. Only once did his hands tighten when she repeated Adrian's words about Nora running into the road. When she finished, Daniel went to a locked cabinet near the pantry. He opened it with a key from his wallet and took out a red leather book. Elena stared. It looked ordinary. That was the cruelest part. "This," Daniel said, "is what he destroyed our lives to find." He set it on the table between them. "Why keep it here?" she whispered. "Because the safest place to hide something is the last place anyone thinks you'd be foolish enough to leave it." A humorless breath almost escaped her. Daniel opened the first page. Inside were names, transfers, shell companies, payoffs, dates, vehicle repairs, phone logs. Even the hospital donation Adrian's father made 2 weeks after Nora died, the exact week the case went cold. Elena felt sick. And then Daniel turned to the back. Tucked into a sleeve was a second envelope. Her name was on it. He hesitated before handing it to her. "What is this?" "In case I didn't get to tell you myself." Her fingers trembled as she opened it. Inside were letters and a property deed. She frowned through tears. "What is this address?" Daniel looked away. "The old theater on Mercer. The one Elena used to pass as a child. The one she said years ago she would turn into an art school someday, if life were fair and beautiful and wild enough to let her." "You bought it?" she whispered. "A year ago." Her eyes blurred. "Why?" The question broke him more than all the others. "Because you stopped dreaming out loud," he said softly. "And I thought if I could hand one back to you, maybe I could give you something grief hadn't touched." Elena covered her mouth and sobbed. All this time she had believed Daniel was hiding betrayal. He had been hiding illness, evidence, and a future for her in case he didn't survive long enough to stay in it. She had walked away from a man building her a tomorrow and into the arms of one who buried her yesterday. A sharp pair of headlights swept across the window. Both of them looked up. Adrian. Daniel closed the ledger instantly. "Elena," he said, "all business now. Go upstairs, lock the bedroom, call 911. "No. Elena, I'm not hiding while he walks away again." Something fierce flashed through Daniel's face. Not disagreement. Recognition. He gave a single nod. Then he took out his phone, hit send on something already prepared and said, "Good, because I sent the files to 3 places 10 minutes ago." Adrian didn't knock. He slammed his fist against the door and shouted, "Daniel, this ends tonight!" Daniel opened the door before the second hit landed. Adrian stood on the porch with rain starting to mist across his shoulders, handsome in the way some knives are beautiful. His eyes found Elena behind Daniel. "You picked him," he said, almost amused. Elena stepped forward before Daniel could stop her. "No," she said. "I finally saw you." Adrian's smile faded. "You think he's the hero?" he asked. "Ask him how many lies it took to play savior." Daniel's voice was cold enough to freeze the rain. "I lied to protect her. You lied to consume her." Adrian laughed. "Spare me." Then he took one step onto the threshold. The porch lights flared. Blue and red strobes flooded the yard. 3 police cars came fast around the corner, tires hissing on wet pavement. For the first time all night, Adrian looked truly cornered. He spun toward the driveway, but not before Elena said the one thing she needed him to hear. Nora had your watch in her hand. He froze. Daniel looked at her sharply. Elena's chest rose and fell. Mom gave it to me after the funeral. She thought it belonged to a paramedic. I found it in her jewelry box after she moved into care. Initials on the back. A.M. Adrian's face drained. I didn't know what it meant then, she said. I do now. The officers reached him just as he bolted. He fought. Of course he fought. Men like Adrian never believe the ending applies to them. But metal still closed around his wrists, and as they pushed him against the hood, rain streaking down his face, he looked back at Elena with all the hatred of a failed parasite. You ruined everything, he spat. Elena stood in Daniel's doorway, shoulders shaking, and said, No, you did that the night you ran. He was gone before sunrise. The house went quiet in that eerie way it only can after violence leaves and grief finally has room to sit down. Elena found Daniel in the kitchen, one hand braced against the counter. He was breathing too hard. Daniel? He tried to answer and couldn't. The color left his face so fast it terrified her. Daniel! He slid before she caught him. The ambulance that took Adrian to jail was not the one that took Daniel to the hospital. That felt unfair in a way language can't fix. In the waiting room, Elena sat with Daniel's blood pressure still echoing in her ears and read every letter in the envelope he had hidden for her. Some were practical. Account numbers, passwords, legal instructions. Some were impossible to survive. If you're reading this, I either waited too long to tell you or life moved faster than I did. I know you think silence is the opposite of love. Maybe sometimes it is. But sometimes, silence is what people choose when they are trying to carry pain without dropping it into the lap of the person they love most. There was one letter about the baby. He had named the child in his head. He never told her because he didn't want to make the loss heavier. He wrote that he still checked the due date every year. Elena cried so hard over that page she had to fold it against her chest to keep from falling apart in front of strangers. By morning, the surgeon came out. Daniel had made it through emergency surgery. Temporary complication. Infection. Stress had pushed a body already at war too far. He was alive. Alive. She laughed and cried at the same time, a broken sound that made the nurse look away to give her dignity. When Daniel woke up late that evening, Elena was sitting beside him in a plastic chair with swollen eyes and Nora's old silver ring digging into her finger. He looked at her for a long time. Then, raspy and weak, he said, You should go home and sleep. It was such a Daniel thing to say that she almost smiled. I am home, she whispered. His eyes closed briefly. When they opened again, there was pain in them, but also honesty stripped clean. Elena, I can forgive what happened, he said, but I can't erase it. The truth landed gently, which somehow made it harder. She nodded through tears. I know. I loved you the whole time, he continued. Even when I was angry, even when I was scared, even when you walked out. Her mouth trembled. But love and trust aren't the same thing, he said. And if we ever build anything again, it can't be from pity, or guilt, or fear of losing me. Elena took his hand carefully, like she had no right to and knew it. Then if there's ever anything again, she said, I'll earn it. Daniel didn't answer. He just squeezed once. Months later, Adrian took a plea deal that exposed more people than he intended. Wealthy men fell. Old cases reopened. Nora's death certificate was amended. Hit and run became vehicular manslaughter. Cowardice became recorded fact. Elena stood at her sister's grave and read the update aloud to a headstone gone slick with rain. I'm late, she whispered, but I came back with the truth. Then she left Nora's favorite red carnations and walked away lighter in the cruelest possible way. Daniel recovered slowly, not perfectly. Some scars never negotiate. Elena never moved back into the house. That mattered. Instead, she spent her mornings at the old Mercer Theater, where dust-covered seats and warped wood waited for the future Daniel had hidden inside a file envelope. She restored it one room at a time. No grand opening cameras, no society pages. Just paint on her jeans, plaster on her hands, and grief finally doing something useful. By spring, the first group of kids came in carrying sketchbooks and cheap brushes and loud opinions. One little girl with missing front teeth stood center stage and asked, Who built this place? Elena looked around at the sun cutting through old glass,
At the floors Daniel paid to save. At the life Adrian almost stole. At the dream she once said out loud to the right man at the wrong time. And she smiled through tears. "A man who loved quietly," she said, "and more bravely than I understood." That night, she drove to Daniel's house with the original brass key to the theater in her palm. He opened the door before she knocked, like maybe some part of him had been listening for her anyway. She held out the key. "For you?" he asked. "For us," she said honestly. "Not as a promise, not as pressure, just truth." Daniel looked at the key for a long second, then at her. Then he stepped aside. Not into the past, just into possibility. Because sometimes the real punishment isn't losing the person who loved you. It's surviving long enough to understand how deeply they did.
Have you ever discovered the truth about someone only after it was almost too late? Tell me in the comments.